Hey everyone, it's Colin. Yeah, I'm goofing with Game Boys yet again. Today I'm going to be installing a backlit screen into an original Game Boy Advance. If you've ever had one of these consoles, you'll know that they shipped with just this really lame, reflective, non-backlit, non-front-lit, non-lit at all screen that was pretty difficult to see under most conditions and always looked kind of washed out. Well, some genius out there on the internet figured out a way to swap out that boring, lame screen for the backlit screen from a Game Boy Advance SP. Specifically, you need the screen from an AGS 101 model. You'll also need a special adapter cable, and these are available at various places on the internet. And all in all, you'll only need a few tools and some really basic soldering experience in order to put the whole project together. So let's get going. The first thing we'll need to do is get the GBA taken apart. This is actually one of the easiest Game Boys to work on because there's relatively few screws and they're in fairly obvious locations. Of course, you'll need to take the battery cover off first. Don't lose this. There are 7 screws holding the back of the GBA on. 6 of them around the perimeter are tri-wing, and then there's a 7th Phillips head screw hiding inside that battery compartment. The side pieces and shoulder buttons simply lift off. Now we need to remove the circuit board from the front housing. Part of that involves disconnecting the display ribbon cable here at the top. Disconnecting the ribbon cable from the socket that it's in is pretty straightforward. I like to use a spudger for this, but if you've got longer fingernails, that can work too. You just want to get the flat edge of the spudger underneath each side of this brown piece. It's called a bail. It applies friction to that ribbon cable to keep it inside the socket. Just work it from one side to the other, and sometimes you'll have to go back and forth because as one side releases, the other side kind of gets tightened again. Get them both loosened up. The bail won't come out completely. If it does, you totally gooched it. With the pointed end of the spudger, simply wiggle the cable free. Notice that the gold contacts are on the top, there's nothing on the back. Then get your Phillips head screwdriver out and remove the 2 or 3 screws holding the motherboard in. If any of these rubber pads stick to it, peel them off, and I'm going to take everything out here so I can clean this whole casing up. It's pretty gross. Yeah, yuck. To pry the screen out, carefully stick the flat edge of your spudger in between the screen and the casing through this little notch. Pretty convenient of Nintendo to put that there, don't you think? You may hear a little bit of snapping and popping sounds as the adhesive releases, but if you're gentle, the screen will come out intact and undamaged like that. So let's get this replacement screen kit stabbed open. I bought it from a fellow in China who sold me both the special ribbon cable and a replacement AGS 101 screen. Oh, look at that. That's kind of nice. You put my name on it. Inside the bag includes both the screen and the ribbon cable, all pre-assembled for me. Plus, as you see that little red wire, he was nice enough to solder that on there for me. That means I only have one solder connection to make inside the Game Boy. A little bit of modification to the Game Boy's front housing has to be done because if you drop the new screen in there and look carefully, you'll notice it doesn't quite sit flush in the back. See, it's kind of tilted backward at an angle. We need to shave out some of the plastic that's holding the screen away from the front bezel, specifically this portion right along here. That all has to get trimmed down flush. There's a few different ways you can do this. Some people use Dremels. I'm going to start off with these nippers and remove the biggest chunks of plastic. Those nippers are still too big to reach some areas, so then I got out a craft knife to shave down the rest of it. This can be kind of long and tedious and a little bit messy, but you get the best control this way. If you peel away the black adhesive gasket, you'll also find a couple more nubby plastic bits that need to get shaved down. They're on the right side over here and then also on the bottom. I've taken a break to clean up all the plastic bits. It's all nice and shiny, clean, not gross anymore. See, the buttonholes are all cleaned out. And we need to do a little bit more modification to this front bezel. Specifically, we need to shave down this bit on this side as well as this bit on the bottom. I will also be taking the opportunity to clean up along here where I cut previously just a little bit. Our plastic bits are all cleaned and trimmed down sufficiently, so let's get this new screen dropped in there. It comes with a protective piece of plastic on the front of it that needs to get removed now. Be careful not to touch the screen with your fingers after this because the fingerprints will become quite obvious. When you drop the screen in, you'll notice that it kind of rattles around a little bit. That's okay. The pressure from the motherboard holding it in will keep it from going anywhere. You'll need to adjust this ribbon cable as well because it's a little bit too long where it is and isn't in the right place. Simply fold it into this Z shape. Then drop all of your buttons and rubber membranes back into place. These have been cleaned up quite thoroughly as well. And then your motherboard goes on top. Once you've got it in there, go ahead and reinsert your video cable and lock it down. Then reinstall your screws. Now's the time to deal with that red wire. It supplies power to the screen's backlight. Over on the right side of the board here, you'll find a couple of components. One is DA1, the other one is labeled DA2. That wire needs to get soldered to the upper left leg of DA1. Simply tack the wire down with your soldering iron and be careful not to short it against any other components. Once it's down, I decided to route that wire above and below these two capacitors to keep it out of the way. At this point, you simply need to reassemble the Game Boy. And here's the finished product. The backlit screen is really something that the GBA should have had from the start, which could possibly explain why the GBA SP came out so relatively quickly. You may be wondering why I would want to do this mod at all. Why not just go out and buy a GBA SP? Well, the fact of the matter is I think the GBA SP is slightly too small. The buttons are a little cramped and too close together. Got a little bit of a fail here. Yep, there it is. Oh well. And add to that the fact that GBA SPs, at least the AGS 101 models, tend to hold a decent value on eBay, and I ended up breaking about even. Between the cost of the kit, which was $45 with shipping from China, and the cost of a used original Game Boy Advance, about $20 with shipping from wherever in the United States. Generally, you're going to find a good AGS 101 for about $60 to $65, unless you want one that's all beat to hell, which, you know, I don't. Now, it's not all roses though either, because there is something I think wrong with this particular kit. You can't really tell too well on video, but there's a reason why I'm shooting it in a dark room. That's because with any sort of light in the room, it's really rather dim. I don't think the screen is quite getting all of the power that it needs. I did a whole bunch of research after getting this kit installed trying to figure out why the screen was so relatively dark. And I checked all the different solder points, I checked all the different connections, making sure I was connecting that wire to the correct component, and everything looks okay. It doesn't look like I screwed anything up. I think it has something to do with that particular replacement flat flex cable, because in some of my troubleshooting, I kept the Game Boy Advance taken apart, turned it on, and wiggled some of the cables around. and I found one particular position between that flat flex cable and the motherboard that got the display looking significantly better. There was a lot more brightness, and there was also a lack of this weird kind of interference or graininess that you may notice in the screen here. It's very prevalent in real life. And I'm going to work with the seller to see if he has any ideas. I wasn't able to try and get that cable positioned just right with that bail locked down. Every time I locked the bail down, it kind of snapped the cable into position and made it look bad again. If I do manage to get the whole thing straightened out, I will of course give you an update. Ultimately, I think this was a worthwhile project, not the least of the fact that I got a YouTube video out of it. I have the handheld that I really wanted from the beginning. I remember getting my first Game Boy Advance back when they came out in 2001, firing it up and going, this is really cool, oh, except I can't see the screen. And I had to use one of those stupid LED dongle lights that hangs over the front and produces a ton of glare. Having a backlit screen is really the way the console should have shipped to begin with, and it's a bit unfortunate that it took over 10 years for us to finally get a solution, but as they say, better late than never. So with this mod out of the way, what's next? Well, here's a hint. Thanks for watching.